Welcome to my November 2009 Make and Take Kit to Go instructions for the Dasher stamp set that we're using this month. The first thing I'm going to show you is stamping on the white, Whisper White cardstock. I'm using Ruby Red and Going Gray, Basic Gray, the darker one. And I'm using my Stamp-A-Majig, but you don't need to. And there's my image. The other four will be the Basic Gray. 2 of your Ruby Red Dasher stamped images and 2 of your Basic Gray stamped reindeer images, you are going to use, you're going to emboss the whole thing in iridescent ice. And the way to do that is to use your Versamark stamp pad. That's the clear, sticky ink for embossing. You're going to just take the whole pad and stamp over the surface. Direct to paper like that so that it's covered with Versamark ink. And then my iridescent ice embossing powder I'm just going to pour over the whole image. Your fingers get kind of glittery. Pour off the excess, tap it off a little bit, and then I'm going to turn it over and actually flick more of the excess off, just so I don't have any bunch of loose powder everywhere. Set that aside so I don't blow it everywhere with my heat tool, and then I'm going to heat the powder until it is melted. And with the iridescent ice it's a little harder to tell that it's turning, but you don't want to heat this one too much. It doesn't take as long as the other embossing powder, so it's going to get noisy. And it's just melted enough that it's stuck on there. You don't want to overheat it or it turns a funny color or kind of gets bluish. And I've even seen it smoke before, so just don't be heating it for too long. You're going to have 4 pieces of Taken with Teal in your kit that are like this, and 4 pieces of Going Gray also. And what I want you to do is tear the bottom, and I want this, because of my layout, I recommend tearing higher up on this side and lower down to this corner. And I'm just going to start it and then just tear down at an angle like that. So I'm going to tear all 8 of those pieces. Now that all my pieces are torn, I want to corner round just the opposing corners. I want to corner around this corner and that corner. So these 2 corners are going to be corner rounded. And then on my layered pieces that are going on my card, I want same. This corner rounded and then this corner down here rounded. And these 2 are going to stay sharp and this corner is going to stay sharp. Now with the corner rounder, this is the 3/16 corner rounder that Stampin' Up! Has. I just layer them because I can do 2 at once. I'm getting it wedged into that corner real good and then just popping that out. Okay, so I have that one rounded. Now, since this is torn, like I say, I'm not going to round that one, but I am going to round the opposite corner on the Dasher stamp piece. So I'm rounding that one, just like that. Okay, and then my layered pieces that are going on my upper left corner of my card, I'm going to do this corner and that corner. And I'm lining them up over here so that I can do them at the same time. So now I have all my corners rounded that I want. I need to poke some holes in the stamped images. I need to have my matte pack, but I don't need the template on top, so I'm just going to set that aside. So all I'm going to use is the cutting mat on the back and the foam pad and the paper piercer, which comes separately now. It's got a little rubber protector on it. I recommend keeping that with it. And I'm just going to poke right in the center of the neck a hole like that so that I can put my clear rhinestone brad in there and then spread the prongs apart on the back. So there's that. I'm going to do a hole on either side of the neck, but I'm going to offset them. The one on the inside of the neck is a little higher than the one on the outside. And I don't know, I've just kind of figured that out because it must be the way that I tie my bows. And then I'm also going to kind of make the holes fairly large so that I can thread my silver cord through the back. This way I've kind of figured out that it helps the tilt of my bow when I tie it, because I seem to get a tilt. So I just threaded both free ends from the back to the front, and I'm going to tie my bow upside down. This elastic cord is a little bit funny the way it works, so I've kind of figured out if I tie it upside down it might help. And then you just have to fuss with it until you get the tails pulled, until you have the bow about as big as you want it. And then just kind of mess with it until it lays where you want it to. Cut the tails off, and that's ready to go. I'm almost ready to assemble all my cards. They're all going to have different ribbon on them. Some are going to have knots, and you've already seen my YouTube video on creating knots. Well, now I'm going to show you how to tie a bow. And I'm using taffeta ribbon on this one. This is my torn piece that has the one edge rounded that's going to go underneath the stamped reindeer. Starting out like I do with my knots, I'm crisscrossing the tails upwards, bringing the right hand down and flipping this top tail from front to back just to reduce the bulk when it gets pulled down. Okay, I'm going to hold that down now. I'm going to create a loop with my bottom tail and pinch it between my thumb and fingers over here. Then I'm going to bring my top tail around and through, just like tying your shoes. And then I'm poking this loop through and pulling tight. I'm just going to move it around, get it centered, slide it down where I want it. And I'm actually going to mount the stamped image on top before I decide how far to slide it down. And for that I'm using Stampin' Dimensionals. Just need 4 on the back is all. And then I'm just going to line this up in the corner there. Now I can kind of finish positioning my bow as far down as I want it and make sure it's centered. And then I'm going to turn it over and I'm going to put a dimensional. I'm going to try to catch half of that ribbon just to try to secure it that way. Half on the paper, half on the ribbon. And really only need 4 dimensionals for this too. Set that aside because now I need to mount these 2 layers together. Just putting a little bit of snail around the edges and a little dot in the center. Line that up, stick it down, a little pressure to make sure it stays, and then same thing on this layer. And I'm going to make this card portrait, and I'm just going to line it up with even edges around there in the corner. And then I'm going to adhere this piece down here with about the same margins in this corner, and I'm watching to make sure it's about right down there too. Okay, now I just need to cut off my tails, and it's done. Okay, here are my 8 different cards. 4 different sheets of designer paper, both sides, so I've got 8 totally different pieces of designer paper showing. I have 4 of these I've embossed with iridescent ice embossing powder. 2 of them have silver elastic cord around the neck, and 2 of them have rhinestones on their neck. And we've got a combination of Sahara Sand, Ruby Red, and Taken with Teal. So there's my November Make and Take Kit of the Month. If you're interested in purchasing a kit that comes with all of the pre-cut and scored cardstock and the pre-cut ribbon and the brads and silver cord, you can go to my website at tostampistobe.com and go to the Kits for Sale page. Thank you!